Welcome back, everybody, to a special episode of the Black Book Podcast, man. Um, this podcast is unlike others, where we won't be sort of interviewing guests, talking about what they're doing. This is to bring light to who we are as a people in this day and age. So today we have a friend of mine, Skinny OG. He's going to talk about his topic on what is because of slavery. So Skinny, go ahead and get started, bro.
So this is all about because of slavery, and thank you for the invitation because this is a topic that are very close to my heart.
Right.
So I feel like because of slavery, we have to defend Blackness. We have to defend Blackness in a way that I think other cultures and other people might not have to so much. In particular, because being Black in this European, Eurocentric dominated world where most people around the world cater to the European value system, that European value system said that being Black means you're the lowest on the totem pole. You're the lowest on the social ladder. So in this age we live in today, supposedly one of equality, you still find that a lot of people harbor those misconceptions about who we are. And they look at society and they assume that because they see us at the bottom of the social scale in a lot of places, they see us being part of the poorer people or the less educated people in the United States, or they see the African continent being raped and pillaged for its resources. They assume it's our fault. They assume that we somehow are flawed, and that's why things are that way. They have no conception of the history of the kind of struggles that we've been through to try to fight against this oppression, but the odds have been stacked against us so deeply and for so long that these days you got to defend Blackness. You got to run into people on social media or even in person sometimes who say the most outlandish, ridiculous stuff with a straight face. They'll say some things like, oh, Black people like living in the ghetto. Oh, Black people like selling drugs. They say the most craziest stuff. They have no conception about what it means and what the effects are of being oppressed for 500 years straight, abject oppression. So when you have our luminaries who talk about things like post-traumatic slave disorder, for some people, those are just words, and those are words they don't even comprehend. They have no idea what it means. But for someone who is intelligent, who can break those words down, then when you look at us through that lens of understanding what trauma means, how prevalent this disorder can be, then you might have a better understanding of why we are the way we are and why we act the way we act sometimes. Even if it seems to be against our own interest, it's not because we want it, it's not because we chose it. I constantly have to defend Blackness because of slavery, because of what has happened to us. I got to educate people on things you would assume they might have learned in school. You might think that they should have known this already, but it's so much easier for the human psyche to accept blaming the victim rather than looking at who are the multiple culprits who have victimized our people, especially when some of them come from the same societies and the same race or the same country as those culprits. So you might find some French people who understand that what the French government is doing in Africa to this day is the reason why most of Africa is poor and corrupt. The French government is single-handedly responsible for at least more than half of the poverty in Africa because they rape everything for the benefit of France. You might have a lot of people in America of broadly different races, whether white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, or whoever, who understand the history of why the Black Lives Matter movement was a necessary thing, was inevitable. But then so many others find it easier to just accept the idea that, oh, Black people just want to break stuff and burn stuff because that's what we do. They might not know the history. They might not understand. You have to educate them about redlining and housing covenants and how the ghettos were built and how black communities were destroyed on purpose by the FHA, building highways through our zone. By NIMBY, they chose to put all the worst things in black neighborhoods, but not in their own backyards. Urban conditions that we see today have a long history. Matter of fact, all the conditions around the world that we see today are the result of long-term plans. Nothing happens overnight. That man who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes, he didn't do that because he woke up that day and decided it. He did it because he felt like the global society and the society he lives in is one where he is allowed to do that. That didn't happen overnight. That's something from a long history. And so because of slavery, we have to defend blackness. And for everybody out there who feels like they're woke or they want to wake up, what I will tell you is this: don't fight your brother before fighting the people who put your brother in that condition. Don't hate your people before you will turn around and be angry at the people who created the conditions to put us in this place. Any anger or rage that you have and that you turn against your own people is misguided. Turn more of that anger and rage towards the people who created those conditions. If you don't understand how those conditions were created, educate yourself. You want to be woke, then wake up. Learn about how those things happen. And not to say that it's not on us to try to fix these things now. It is on us because it's happening to us. But never disavow the facts. Never disavow the truth. Before you tell someone that they got to pull themselves from their bootstraps, ask yourself, do they have any boots on? And if they don't, why don't they have any boots on? Then give them some boots. Help them get some boots and then tell them to pull up their bootstraps because of slavery.
Wow. All right. Oh, man. That's cool. Wow. I don't know what to say about that one. That was powerful, bro. That was real powerful. Man, I feel like you got a lot more to say too.
I do. I'm just like, I'm the type to be like, don't get me started on this right now because I'll just go on for days, man. It's so deep. There's so many levels to this. I really
Right.
want to break down for those who don't understand how deeply ingrained this condition is. And the reason that they had to do so much to create this false idea of racism was for the economic exploitation of our people and where we come from.
Right.
When you look at the stock market in New York, for example, the first four commodities that got traded on the stock market was sugar, coffee, cocoa, rubber, slaves, and none of that was made in America except for cotton. Cotton was what America was producing, but the rubber, the slaves, the gold, the cocoa, they was taking all that from where? From Africa. And that's what
Right.
they was trading on the New York Stock Exchange, on the New York Stock Exchange. So that's how Wall Street got built, on the backs of slaves and sugar and coffee, cocoa. And when you start understanding that and you look at the Western world and all the wealth they've amassed, and nowadays they're telling us, well, we got to lift ourselves by our bootstraps. But to be honest, they didn't lift themselves up by their bootstraps. They did it through exploitation
Yeah,
and
or
pillaging.
they'll tell you that that that's this company that they have was created, what I'm saying, through great good means and all this other shit like that. And you go like,
Right,
motherfucker, yeah, but the money that you got to create that motherfucking company didn't come from good means. That shit came from slavery. Like there's
right,
a ton of companies like that in the UK and the US where like maybe
right,
they rebranded themselves after fucking slavery was abolished or some shit like that, or and nowadays nobody really know who the fuck they are because they can change their name, but
right,
follow the money, you'll
right.
find out. You'll find out what the fuck happened.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so they built, like in America in particular, they built up the idea of racial slavery because some people say, well, slavery has always existed throughout time, which is true.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
we currently live in a Eurocentric world, and their model of slavery was created on the idea of we'll have a few rich white people and all the black people got to be destitute. and the buffer in between will be a bunch of poor white people, middle class white people. And the way we keep those middle class white people is by allowing them to exploit the black people.
Mm.
So you got to tell them, you got to justify it, right? So you got to tell them, oh, they're not human. Oh, they're savages. Oh, they're ignorant. Oh, they've never
Right.
done nothing. Oh, they monkeys who live in trees and caves. Oh, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And they make up all this
Right.
fake information to
Manifest
justify.
destiny. God told me that I was better than you type shit. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they just created that just for the money. The people, the most educated white people, which a lot of the rich, super wealthy white people, they're well educated. They know black people weren't monkeys. They knew about the great kings of Egypt and Aksum and Mansa Musa, and they knew all of that. They knew that Africans had been the first ones to sail across the Atlantic to the New World. They knew all of that. But the fact is, it didn't serve their purposes to let everyone else know it. When they want to
Mm.
control the poor white people, they're not going to allow them to know that. They're going to spread the false narratives, which now have become the dominant narrative, which is, oh, blacks, we're like monkeys. We helped them colonizing and enslaving them. We was doing them a favor because they wasn't doing nothing in Africa. They was woo, 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 woo. They was, I'm saying, savages. They know
Mm.
that's not true. And the more you have to fight that narrative got created for slavery. That narrative got created for the economic exploitation. They
Mm.
wasn't coming to Christianize us. They wasn't coming to help us. They wasn't coming to do anything good for us. They just wanted the wealth. When you
Absolutely.
had you had the Queen of England selling opium, drug dealing in China for
Mm.
200, 300 years, forcing opium into the Chinese market because they wanted Chinese goods. They wanted tea, they wanted silk, they wanted porcelain, and they couldn't afford to pay for it. So what they do, they're like, well, we're
They
gonna sell
stole it.
drugs over here. They
Basically stole
decided to sell drugs in China and get money by turning a bunch of people to drug addicts, millions of people, and then use that money to be like, well, here goes your money for your tea and your porcelain. And so it's like, when you know that the English government was drug dealing for 300 years, how can you be surprised if you find out that the CIA was the one selling crack, selling cocaine in the ghettos of America to
Right.
finance their own illegal wars? That's
Right.
just the way they do. But they create all these false narratives and make it seem like we want to be selling drugs in the ghetto. They created the ghettos and they
Mm.
impoverished us on purpose. And then they put all these drugs and guns in. Like, people in the ghetto don't grow poppy. That shit don't grow in Compton. People in the ghetto don't grow coca plants. Some people might have some weed plants. That's easy to grow. They don't grow coca. That shit grows high in the mountains of South America. They don't grow poppy. Poppy grows over in Afghanistan.
Mm.
That's in India. That's where they grew it, transport it, and ship it. The guns. Where did the guns come from? There are no gun factories in Harlem. So the
Right.
false narratives that they create somehow become the dominant narratives because they controlled the media. So they were
Hmm.
able to push these narratives to the point where now people look at Black history like it's slavery and it's Black people just being less than worth than nothing. And they tell them, a lot of people who absorb this narrative tell themselves it's our own fault because that's what we want to do. That's what we want to be because we never had nothing else. We could never do nothing else except
Right.
that. The white man
Hmm.
tried to save us from ourselves, but despite his benevolence, he failed because we're just so unredeemable. And
Exactly.
that becomes the narrative that they spread. When it's all made up so that a few elites can benefit. And it's ironic at the end of the day, now that more people are waking up to the realities and they see that there are almost as many, there are more poor white people now than there are poor Black people. You go to
Hmm.
Appalachia and certain parts of America, you see a whole lot of poor white people. You see the opioid epidemic crisis. It's hitting a lot of more white people than Black people. But that's because the elites always had it as a plan to take all the money and not share it with the
Hmm.
white people. Once slavery was abolished, they still allowed the middle classes, the white middle classes, to exploit and damage us, because they still had to keep that control.
Right.
Now, as civil rights takes a rise and we start getting some more rights and some more freedoms, which we should have always had in America, the white people have to pay the price. More and more white people, middle class and poor white people, are going to bear the brunt of the fact that their ancestors bought into the bullshit. And a lot of white people nowadays, they might be Trump supporters or they might be on the right wing of the political party, but they'll say, "Oh, I'm not a racist," but they still have a lot of those racially designed ideologies running around in their heads because they've never learned any better. And that's
That's true.
all the things that we deal with. We trying to rise. We got to always be better than a white man. You can't be the same as a white man and expect to get the same treatment. You got to be better than. And even then, you might be Dr. Henry Louis Gates and try to get into your own house and the cops pull guns on you and arrest you, a Harvard professor, and they say, well, we just saw a black man trying to break into a house. It's his own house, but they was going to shoot him. And that's what you go through as a black person. So that's what we deal with because of slavery. And it's not just in America, it's even worse in certain other parts, like in Africa, where the richest continent on earth is being exploited, like raped. And every time they have had a leader who wants to stand up and do for his people, he gets assassinated. Like straight up assassinated. They take him out. Like, we're still talking about the fact that Malcolm X got killed and Medgar Evers got killed and Dr. King got killed, Those there's a bunch of people in Black America who got killed.
Right.
There's a bunch of people in Africa who got killed. And these guys were presidents, heads of state. Like, you the president of your country, you're gonna help your country, boop, you get shot. And then everyone keeps on going like this isn't a big scandal. Like, they don't teach about Lumumba and Thomas Sankara and Amilcar Cabral and all these African presidents who were assassinated. We know about Dr. King and Malcolm X. Do we know there are about 30 of them in Africa who got killed at the same time? They keep us divided and keep us as ignorant as they can keep us, and keep on perpetuating the false ideals that they've been perpetuating since slavery.
Absolutely, man. Well, dude, I really appreciate, man, your perspective and the stories you just told us, man. And I hope people listen to these, man, and really, take heed and learn and listen from what you just told us.
It's a pleasure talking to you, bro. It's a pleasure talking to you, bro. That's what we all got to do. Keep spreading the truth. Keep educating ourselves and letting more people know that it's a lot deeper than what they might think. And the first thing we can do is care about what's going on. Before you can put your hand to do something or open your mouth to say something, you got to have your heart in the right place and your thoughts in the right place. You got to care and you got to know, and then you got to speak and you got to act. So take the first step and just keep moving forward after that. Thank you for your podcast, man. You're doing a good thing, man. I'm just on a mission. I'm trying to live my dream.